Hey everybody, I'm Steve from Third Eye, and we're in the stacks today at Third Eye Comics. Today I'm going to tell you about 5 of my favorite graphic novels, comics, whatever you want to call them. I probably read them when they were comics, of all time. So the first one we're going to talk about is a little bit newer, but this is probably my favorite book in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. This book blew me away. Like I was floored with how much I enjoyed this run. It reminds you a lot of Alan Moore's classic Swamp Thing run. Gets into a lot of really cool cosmic horror stuff. Like, you know, just real creepy, really awesome. People use the term body horror about it a lot. And I would say that it does kind of hit that. I'm like kind of like a back and forth Hulk guy. I like the Peter David stuff, rest in peace, a legend. I like the Planet Hulk stuff. But my favorite run of all time probably is Immortal Hulk. It went for about 10 trades, and like start to finish, it is phenomenal. One of the best reads around. If you haven't read this yet, whether you're a Hulk fan or not, if you just like good comics, I'd highly recommend it. I'd especially call it out to people who enjoy old school Vertigo, like Animal Man, Doom Patrol, things like that. It hits that vein perfectly. But yes, Immortal Hulk Volume 1, you gotta get it. All right. My next favorite book that I want to talk to you guys about is The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This is my favorite Alan Moore book of all time. And that's a pretty high compliment because, I mean, obviously, Alan Moore has done a lot of good stuff. But Killing Joke, great. You know, Watchmen, you can't mess with it. This is the one that I like the best. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's the one I like the best. When this first came out and they did the America's Best Comics in the late 90s, I actually don't think I had read any Alan Moore at that point. I was maybe like 15 or 16. I hadn't read Watchmen yet. But I really was stoked on this whole America's Best Comics thing that was coming out. So I read all of those. And the one that really stuck was League. League is just, I don't know, it's really interesting. The artwork in it is just perfect for the tone of the story, and this kind of cool like metatextual like kind of view of like fictional characters throughout time being woven into a story, essentially taking like a Justice League of literary characters, like, you know, characters like Hemingway's, you know, and you know, Mina Harker and all of those, Mr. Hyde, and like applying the super team dynamic to it is so freaking beautifully weird. I love every second of it. He's done a bunch of these. This is the book that collects the first 2 series, those are my 2 favorite. It gets into stuff like War of the Worlds and like Island of Dr. Moreau. And I mean, Mr. Hyde is like, he's a badass in this. Like, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Just like Watchmen or anything else, there's a lot of meat to the bone on this. There's a lot of back matter, a lot of extra content. And if you've never read it and you like Alan Moore's stuff, like, I mean, I'd highly recommend it. There's some of the back matter, and like, you can see that art is just gorgeous. And the storytelling, I mean, look at the Martians. The Martians are so dope. But yeah, this is one of my all-time favorites. I've read this a few times. I mean, one of the best bad guys. Like, the Invisible Man is terrible. And like, when he gets what he deserves, it's awesome. So, highly recommended. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You gotta check it out. All right, I'm saving my favorite for last. So I'm gonna move to my not favorite, but my next favorite, which is Peter Bagge's Hate. I don't have an easy to wield version of this in stock right now. There's a paperback coming out later this year called The Complete Hate, which is gonna be a little bit more wieldy than a slipcase of 3 hardcovers. However, this is totally worth owning. I think I own 2 versions of this, to be honest with you. In the 90s, I loved going to comic shops, and I would hit like their 50-cent bins, and I would check out like some of the weirder stuff. I was a weird kid, so I'd always like to like kind of dive into stuff that was a little out of the ordinary and a little bit like, you know, what the hell is this? And I remember getting this and Daniel Clow's 8-Ball out of a quarter bin, and I think I was like 13, and I read them both, and I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And they were kind of like treasure hunts, where you'd find this really weird kind of special thing, and then no comic shop ever had it. So I had to like travel around to like get my run piece together, find new issues, things like that. And one of our locations now, which is the Third Eye in College Park, used to be a comic shop way back in the day called Closet of Comics in College Park. And that was the only store in Maryland that had like a consistent supply of like Hate, Love and Rockets, 8-Ball, And I remember like having to like, basically do everything I could to catch rides to that store at least once a month so I didn't miss these. Hate's a Blast. It's basically like 90s grunge culture, slackers, it's just funny, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to like kind of like describe it any better than that. It's just funny. It's good cartooning. Peter Bagg's a great cartoonist. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I still go back and read it. It's a blast. So that's Hate. And then second to last is this one is this one is pretty cool. This is so when I grew up, when I got into comics, I was about maybe like, oh God, like 10 or 11. And like, I moved around a lot as a kid. So like the first thing I would do is I'd always find a comic shop, right? And I had bounced around through a few. I call this one like Trailer Park Noir in a way, because I discovered this because I was living in this park, and basically my neighbor had a stack of Faust. And I remember reading that and listening to Gore and Suicidal Tendencies when I was like 12, and my brain just exploded. So I went out and I basically was like hunting this thing down, and it felt forbidden. Like, you'd go into a comic shop and like you'd be like, do you have Faust? And like the owner, especially when you're like a 13-year-old kid, he'd be like, no. And then like you just have to keep going until you'd catch maybe the weekend guy, or like somebody who really, maybe they didn't care, or maybe they were cool, and they'd be like, you got, all right. And my shop that I grew up going to, that knew that like I was reading like, Frank Miller as a kid, stuff like that. They're like, okay, I think it's cool. I don't think we're getting any trouble for this. And they were like, cool, I got some Faust in. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna get my run put together. Now I've got my own collection. I don't have to borrow it from my buddy next door. Faust is just awesome. It's demons and blood and guts and vigilantism in that like weird world of the supernatural. Like, it's like, I don't even know if I can open this thing up because there's some stuff going on in there, but like, it's like everything that when you're like a 12 or 13-year-old kid listening to like, heavy metal and hip hop and skateboarding and all that fun stuff that you want out of a comic book. And like, I am so stoked with this edition that came out a couple years ago that put the whole run in one book for me to just dig into and go crazy with. Highly recommend it if you've never read it. If you like stuff, whether it's like The Boys or like, anything that's like kind of got like that aggressive kind of vibe to comics, like, and you haven't read Faust, I highly recommend checking it out. It'll blow your mind. You'll love it. And then my final one, and this is probably it's probably the reason why Third Eye exists. The comic that like I like got into and really got me attached to creators was Preacher. So Preacher is my all-time favorite comic. There's a couple close seconds. One that I actually didn't talk about because I forgot, which is Stray Bullets. I love that book. But Preacher was the book that like for me, like made me start paying attention to the names on the comics. I had read an article, I think, in Wizard about Preacher when I was a kid, and I was like, man, that sounds freaking wild. Let me check that out. And I started hunting it down. And I remember I picked up issue number 9. There's some wild stuff in that issue. And I was like, dude, I gotta find more of this. And I was like, who is this? And I started noticing, okay, Garth Ennis. And at the same time, like shortly after Preacher started, I think maybe about a year, Hitman came out. And, I was seeing his name on old back issues of Hellblazer. And like the combination of his writing and Steve Dillon's art was something I had never ever like seen in comics. Like I as a kid, I hated narrative boxes. Like I hated like the little like, like wordy boxes at the top, and like I wasn't into thought balloons. And this didn't have any of that. Like everything was told through the facial expressions, and the storytelling was very like kind of cinematic and kind of pulled out. And I fell in love with it. And like over the course of time, like I followed this book. Like the first week of the month was Preacher Week, and I had that dialed in. I was like, I got to get to the shop. That's the week it's coming out. And it was the thing I looked forward to the most. And I mean, like probably like after I got into this, that's when I started looking at the names of creators on books, and I was like, okay, cool. Like Grant Morrison, oh, I like this. And people that like, I was like, okay, so it matters who's writing these books. And that's a huge part of kind of like what we're about at Third Eye, is we always put the focus on the creator. I at the end of the day, you know, Thor's going to be Thor, but Jason Aaron Thor is Jason Aaron Thor. Walt Simonson Thor is Walt Simonson Thor. And I owe a lot of that through line back to Preacher. And if you've never read it, I should actually talk about the book for a quick second. You really should. It's just a great read that defies any genre. I mean, basically the long and short of it is Jesse Custer. He's a minister without faith. His congregation gets knocked out by a comet. That comet is the offspring of an angel and a demon called Genesis. Bonds with him, gives him the word of God, which means when he tells somebody to do something, he's got to do it. And he knows basically that God has left heaven, and that starts him on a path where he's like, hey, look, man, I've had a pretty screwed up upbringing, and you're rolling out. I got to find you. And he goes on this journey to find him. But along the way, there's a lot of cool, like, just stuff about relationships between friends, doing the right thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. I mean, as a kid, basically, who didn't have, like, a strong father figure, like, Preacher is the kind of book where you look at, like, cool, what would Jesse Custer do? That's what this is about. So, Preacher, if you've never read it, you should definitely check it out. I promise you'll love every second of it. And those are my 5 favorite graphic novels. Now, there's like 5 more I thought about while I was doing this. So, like, I love comics, so I can't just keep these people here all day talking about these comics. But I'll tell you what, those 5, if you're looking for some bangers, those are ones to start with that I would highly recommend. Crank some music up loud and just sit back, and they will pull you in. Awesome. Thanks for listening to me ramble, everybody. You can find us online at thirdeyecomics.com. And until next time, buy Third Eye or die.